Hello Divination and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create a recipe card with Divi's Theme Builder. This is the final result we're aiming to achieve, so without wasting a lot of time, let's dive in and let's get started. Alright, so right now I'm in my WordPress admin dashboard, so the first thing we need to do is to install a plugin called Advanced Custom Fields. So come over here to Plugins, click on Add New. Now this plugin is free. So just go ahead and search for it and then install it. So right now I've searched for it and here it is. It's a very popular plugin. As you can see here, it has over 1 million installations. I'm going to click on install now, activate, and now we have an entry here which says custom fields. So go ahead and click on it and add a new field group. So here you just want to add the group and we're going to call it a recipe card. Click here to add a field. So this first field here is going to be called a recipe title. And then on here, you want to make sure that the field type is set to text. And then all the way down here on the placeholder text, just set this to recipe title, and this field here which says required, just say yes to that. And on the character limit, let's set this to 30. So pretty much that's all we need to do here. So the next stage is to add another field. So to do that, I'm just going to scroll down here, click on this plus button to add another field. Now this field here is going to be the recipe author. And the field text, again, is going to be set to text. Make sure you set this to required. And for the placeholder text, I'm going to set this to author. All right, so next we also need to add another one. And to do that, we're just going to click here on add field. And the field label for this one here is going to be the recipe prep time. And over here on the field type, now because this is going to do with time, we want to set this to number. So I'm going to choose number over here. And then here on required, let's say yes to that. And the default value, I'm just going to add these pound signs. And here on the prepend, I'm just going to add prep time. And then finally for the append, I'm just going to set this to min for minutes. So we're not done yet. So we need to continue adding another one. So I'm going to click here on add field. And this one here is going to be our recipe servings. And the field type is going to be number as well. I'm going to set this to required. And again, for the default value, I'm just going to set this to pound signs. And then on the prepend here, I'm just going to set this to servings. So our next field is going to be the recipe flavor tip. So I'm going to click here on add field, add my title, make sure it's set to required. And for the field type, this time we're going to set this to text. For our character limit, I'm going to set this to 40. And then on the prepend here, I'm going to set this to flavor tip. So moving on, the next one here is going to be our image. So I'm going to click here on this plus button and we are going to set this to image. And then obviously on the field type, this needs to be set to image. Select it, make sure it's set to required. And for this one, pretty much that's all we need to do. Now let's add another one. So I'm going to click on add field. And this one here is going to be the recipe ingredients title. And the field type is going to be text. But notice when I click here away from this field label, this one here fills in by default, which is good. Okay, so instructions. So this one here is going to have some instructions. So I'm just going to add my text in here. And the text just says, just write the same as placeholder text. So we're going to make sure that this is set to required. And the placeholder text needs to be set to ingredients. So you can see here, there's quite a lot of fields that we're adding. So again, we're going to continue and add another one. And this time, this one here is going to be the recipe ingredients list. So I'm going to click here on add field, add it in here. And over here, it's going to be our text field is going to be text. We're going to set this to required. Now for the instructions here, I'm just going to say add a space after every item. And finally, we're going to add our last field here. And this one here is going to be called recipe preparation title. It's going to be a text on the field type. And then I'm just going to add this for the instructions, set this to required. And the placeholder text needs to be just set as preparation. Actually, I thought that was the last one. So we still need to add one more. And I promise this is the last one. So I'm going to click here on add field. And this one here is going to be our recipe preparation list. And it needs to be set to, on the field type here, instead of leaving it a text, we're going to set this to text area. On the instructions, we can just say add a space after every item. and required. We're going to set this to yes. And pretty much this is all we need to do. So once you've added all this, the next thing we need to do here is go all the way to the top and click on publish. So now these advanced custom fields that we've just created can be accessed in the Divi module by creating the dynamic content icon. So let me show you how this actually works. So let's head over here to our post, click on categories, because the first thing we need to do here on the categories is to create a category called recipes. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Just going to set my slug here and then add new category. So now you can see my category has been added. Now let's head over here to our theme builder. So under Divi, I'm just going to click here on theme builder. We're going to click here on add new template. And the template we're going to be building here is based on the category that we've just created. So I'm going to come over here and you can see when I mouse over this area, I can actually go in and choose recipes. So I'm going to click here on create template. And then we can go ahead now and start working on it. So I'm going to click here where it says add custom body, build custom body. We're going to build this from scratch. So the very first thing we need to do here is to add our background color. So I'm just going to close this and go over here to our section settings, click on background, click on this plus button and add this background color. Now, if you want to use the exact same colors as I'm using throughout this tutorial, I will leave a link to the post in the show notes below. All right, so the next thing we need to do here is to come over here to design sizing. Our width here needs to be set to 100%. And then over here on the maximum width, we're going to do the same, set this to 100%. Now it's time to add our first row. So I'm going to save this, click on this plus button, and I'm going to add a single column. And in my column background color, I'm going to set it to white. So I'm going to click on row settings, background, set this to white. I'm going to come over here to design border. So here on the borders, I'm going to set my sides to 1 VW on all sides. And then I'm going to set my border style. So the width here is going to be 5 pixels. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. And then I also need to add my color. And in fact, this default one here is fine, and then save. So now let's start populating our area here. So I'm going to click on this plus button and search for a text module. I'm going to select it. And then over here, I'm going to click on this little icon here. So once I click on that icon, you can see here all my advanced custom fields are now showing over here. So the one that we need here is the recipe title. Go ahead and select it. So if you want this recipe title to show as a heading, you just need to use this code on the before, and on the after, you just need to add a / here to close the tag. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and then I'm just going to style the text by coming over here to design, heading text. So as you can see here, we are on heading 1. So I'm going to change my font here to Oriental. I'm going to set the weight here to bold, the alignment to center. And for the color here, I'm going to set this to a very dark gray. So I'm just going to replace this color here with this one. And now let's add our sizes. So over here, I'm going to set my size to 3 VW. But while I'm here, I might as well set my sizes for the tablet and the phone. So I'm going to click here on tablet, and here I'm going to set this to 4 VW. And for the phone to 5 VW. Now, the reason why we're doing this is because we want this to look really nice on all mobile sizes. So, and again, here on the letter spacing, I am going to set this to 3 pixels and my line height to 1.5. So here we need to modify the spacing values too. So I'm going to come over here to spacing, and I'm going to start here with my bottom margin. So I'm going to set this to -1, and I might as well go into the tablet as well. So on the tablet, I'm going to set this to -2. And on the phone, I'm going to set it to -5. So I just want to make sure this one here is -2. Now let's set our padding. So here on the top padding, I'm going to set this to 1 VW and the bottom padding to 0. Now we also need to add the left and right padding over here. So I'm going to add 3 VW, and I'm going to activate this chain so that my value is added to both sides. So pretty much this is what we need to do. I'm going to save this. And next we're going to add another text module. So I'm going to click here on this plus button, search for my text module, select it. So this time we need the recipe author. So I'm going to click here on my dynamic content, recipe author. So let's stylize this text. So first of all, I'm just going to save this. And then over here on design, I'm just going to make sure that my font here is changed from Poppins to Encode Sans. So I'm going to select my font here, and I'm also going to set my color here by adding this dark gray color. And by the way, as I mentioned before, if you want to use the exact same colors as I'm using throughout this tutorial, I will leave a link to the post in the show notes below. All right, so the next thing we need to do here is to add our text size. So I'm going to set this to 1.4 VW. Now we're also going to go in here and set our tablet. And for our tablet, it's going to be 2.4. And for the phone, it's going to be 3 VW. Now, as you can see, things don't look really nice over here. So let's go ahead and center this. And to make this look much better, we're going to come over here to spacing and add our top margin of 1 VW. And I just want to make sure here I'm on the desktop tab. So for the bottom padding, we're going to set this to 2 VW. And then for the left and right padding, we're going to set this to 2 VW. So pretty much I'm done here. I'm going to go ahead and save. All right, so now it's time to add a second row. So I'm going to come over here, click on this plus button, and the column structure we're going to use is going to be this one right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. Now, before we add any modules, let's head over here to our row settings, because in here we need to set our gutter width and also our width. So I'm going to click here on design sizing. So here on the gutter width, make sure you activate this, set it to yes, and then just leave it at 2. And then over here on the width, this needs to be 90%. And over here on the maximum width, this needs to be 100%. The row alignment needs to be set to left. And then we need to head over here to our spacing. And then over here on the spacing, we need to add a top and bottom padding of 0.5 VW. And then for the left padding, we're going to set this to 10 VW. Now let's head over here to the advanced tab. And over here on visibility, on horizontal overflow, we just need to make sure this is set to visible, and the same thing on vertical overflow. So the next stage now is to add some borders to our columns. So I'm going to come over here and we're going to start here with the first column. Click here on this gear icon, design, border, and we're going to set this to 1 VW. And then the size here is going to be 4 pixels. In fact, let's make it 5. And our border color here is fine. So what you need to do is to go ahead and add these borders to 2 of the remaining columns. Now, the next feature we're going to add to this is to add a transform on hover. So we want this to slightly expand when you hover on it. And for us to do that, we just need to go to each column. So I'm going to start here with the first column, click on design, transform, and here on hover. And to set your hover, you need to click on this arrow here pointing up. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Click on the hover tab and then just make sure that you add 105%. And then just making sure that this one here stays at 100. So you need to do the same for the other columns. So all you have to do is to go back over here, do the same thing to the next one and the final one. Right, so the next stage now is to just save this and then add a text module to column 1. So I'm just going to search for it. And then we're going to add a background color to this. So I'm going to click on this plus button and add my color. So we just need to add this lime green in the background color. And if you want to use the exact same color, I'm going to leave that in the post, which I'll link to in the show notes below. So over here on design, we're going to style our heading 5. So I'm going to make sure I'm on the heading 5 tab. So our font here is going to be the one that we've used before, Orienta. And for the color, we're going to use this very dark gray that we've used before. And now it's time to add our sizes. So I'm going to start here with the desktop size, which is going to be 1 VW. And then for the tablet, we're going to set this to 2.3 VW. And then finally, for the phone, we're going to set this to 3.3 VW. So you may have noticed nothing has changed here, and that's because we haven't assigned our heading 5 yet. And then over here for our text alignment, we're going to set this to center. Now let's head over here to our spacing, because over here we're going to add a top padding of 1 VW. And for the bottom here, we're going to set this to 0.5. And for the left and right, we're going to set this to 2 VW. Activate your chain and then save. So what we're going to do next is to duplicate this twice and add it over here to these two columns. So I'm going to click this duplicate button, drag this over here, and drag the final one over here. Now it's time to go back over here to the first column. So I'm going to click the text module, click here on the dynamic content, and what we need here is the prep time. So I'm just going to choose here my recipe prep time. So over here, I'm just going to add my tag and the word prep time. And then I'm also going to close the tag by entering it here where it says after, and then save. Moving on, let's go to column 2. So I'm just going to save this. Click here on this gear icon to go into my text settings, dynamic content, and then over here we need recipe servings. On the before, I'm going to set my text here. And then on the after, again, like what I did before, I'm just going to close the tag and then save. I'm going to save this one more time. And then over here, I'm going to go into my text module again, click here on dynamic content. And then this time I'm going to go with recipe flavor tip, add my before text, and then add my closing tag. So these tags now will be assigned the heading 5 that we set up earlier on. Now I'm going to save this one more time. Now it's time to add a third row. So I'm going to click here on this plus button, and the column structure that we're going to go with is this one right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. And now let's go into our row settings by clicking here on the settings icon, design, sizing, and making sure our gutter width here is set to 2. And then over here for our width, we're going to set this to 80%. And for our maximum width, this is going to be 100%. Now for this row, we're going to get rid of the top margin. So I'm going to come all the way down here to spacing, and let's get rid of this top margin over here. We're going to click here on advanced, visibility, and like we did before, our horizontal overflow is going to be set to visible, and same thing with the vertical. Now back over here on content, we also need to add some borders on all our columns. So I'm going to start here with column 1, click on design, border, set this to 1 VW, we're going to set this to 5, and we also need to make sure that the rest of them have the same style. So go ahead and just repeat this process on these two columns. So pretty much that's all we need to do. I'm going to go ahead now and save. Right, so on this very first column here, we're going to add an image module. So I'm going to click on this plus button and search for my image module, select it. So what you want to do here is to delete this and then click on this icon, scroll all the way down here. Now the image we're going to add here is the recipe image, and this is going to be added dynamically. So I'm going to click here to set my recipe image. I'm going to save that. And then over here, I'm going to click on this plus button and search for my text module. And then over here on the dynamic content, I'm going to scroll all the way down, and what I need here is the recipe ingredients title. So I'm going to select it, and then for the before and after, I'm just going to add my heading 3 tags and save. Now I have to go into design and set my text. So I'm going to click here on heading text. Make sure you've set heading 3 or you're in the heading 3 tag. And then here I'm going to set my Orienta font. On the color here, we're going to add that very dark gray. And then over here on the sizes, I'm going to set this to 1.6 VW. Make sure that this is aligned to the center. And now let's head over to the styling. So over here on spacing, we're going to add a top padding of 2 VW, bottom margin of 0 VW, and left and right padding of 2 VW. So we're going to save this for now. And then here in column 2, we're also going to add a divider module. So I'm just going to search for it. I'm going to select it. And then on the design here, we're going to go to line and add our color. So I'm going to paste it in here. And as I mentioned before, if you want to use the exact same color, I will leave a link to the post in the show notes below. All right, so now that I have my color in here, I'm going to come over here to sizing. So the divider weight here, I'm going to set this to 5 pixels. And then on the width, we're going to set this to about 40%. And then for the alignment, I'm going to align this to the left. And then over here on spacing, we're just going to make sure that we add a top margin of 0 VW and then save. Next, we're going to add another module here. And this time it's going to be a text module. I want to select it. And then over here on the dynamic text, this is going to be our recipes ingredients list. Now here we need to enable row HTML. We're going to save this. And then over here on design, we are going to make sure that our font here is the right one by selecting Orienta. In fact, let's change this to Encode Sans. I think that's a better one. Okay, so on our color here, we're going to use that very dark gray. And now let's add our sizes. And for the desktop, I'm going to set this to 0.9 VW. And then for the tablet, we're going to set this to 2 VW. And for the phone, we're going to set this to 3 VW. Right, so let's adjust our spacing here. So come over here to spacing. So I'm going to start here with my top margin, which we're going to set to -1 VW. So for the padding here, I'm going to set this to 0 VW. And for the bottom, we're going to set this to 3 VW. Now we're also going to add 3 VW here for the left and right so that this has enough breathing space. So pretty much we're done here. I'm going to save. And then what we need to do is to duplicate all these modules here and add them onto the third column. Now the easiest way to do it is to head over here to our wireframe view, and then I can just do it one by one here. So I'm going to start with my text, drag it over here, go to my divider, drag it over here, and then the final one all the way here. Great, so now I can switch over here to my desktop view, and now I can go in and change these titles. So over here on the first one, I am going to click here on module settings, and we're going to change this from ingredients title to recipe preparation title. So I'm going to come over here, click again on this dynamic link, choose my recipe preparation title, save that, save it one more time, move on to this one here, click on the gear icon. I want to delete this, and this time I need the recipe preparation list. Go ahead and select that, save this one more time. Now it's time to add the fourth row. So I'm going to click here, and my column structure I'm going to go with is this one right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select it, and let's head over here to our row settings, design. And here we just need to make sure our width is set to 100% and our maximum width is set to 80%. So I'm going to click here on sizing. So this needs to be 100, and for my max width here, it needs to be 80. And now for my spacing here, for my left and right padding, we're going to set this to 0 VW, activate my chain. And now I'm going to go to my column 1 settings, click on background, and let's add a background color here and set this to white. Now we also need to adjust the spacing here. So I'm going to click on design, spacing, and on my left padding here, we're going to set this to 0 VW. We're going to add a border, and here on the sides, it's going to be 1 VW, just like the rest of them. My width here is going to be 5 pixels, and I'm going to leave the default color as it is. Right, so for now, we're going to save this one more time. So what I'm going to do here is in this column here, we're going to add post content. So I'm just going to scroll down all the way down here, and there we go, post content. So we need to make a few adjustments here. So I'm going to click on this gear icon, design, text. Make sure that our text here is set to encode sans, and my size to 0.9 VW. And for my line height, I'm going to set this to 2 EM. Now let's set our heading sizes. So I'm going to scroll down here, go to my heading text, and then I'm going to choose my heading 1 and set this to Orienta. And for my color here, I'm going to use this very dark gray. Next, I'm going to set my heading 2, do the same thing, set it to Orienta, set your font color, and then do the same for heading 3 as well. I'll set my color here. So now all my headings all match. Now we're going to come over here to spacing, and we're going to set our top and bottom padding to 2 VW. We just want to give this some breathing space. Activate my chain here. So pretty much our template is done here. I'm going to save this one more time, and then close out of my builder here. So now if we want to set our post, all we have to do is to come over here, click on add new. In fact, I need to save this. Now I can create my post by clicking on add new. So now you can see all my posts or my areas where I can add all my text from ACF. So let's start here with my recipe title. So I'm going to add my title in here, add my recipe author. So my prep time here is going to be 15, recipe servings 3. And then for my flavor tip here, I'm going to add that. Next, I'm going to add my image here. So I'm going to click on add image. So I need an image here that goes with food. So you know what? I don't actually have an image here. So I'm going to go with this one here. Select that. So here, I'm going to set this to ingredients. And for the ingredients list, this is where you can go in and add your ingredients. So preparation title, I'm just going to leave this as preparation. Add my preparation list. And then finally, I'm just going to give this post a title. Now, what's important here is to come over here to your categories and make sure you set this to recipes, because we've just spent a lot of time creating our recipe template. So now over here, you can add your content. I'm just going to use the default editor here, and you can also add your headings. So let's set a heading 1. Now let's publish this. We can view our post. And pretty much this is what it looks like. So there you have it. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and do follow us on our social media platforms. By doing so, you'll be notified every time we release new tutorials. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.